Hello, and welcome back. This is fun because we haven't gotten to do many live intros. Normally it's daily and happy hour, but we are about to air our Amazing Race panel.
20th anniversary.
20th anniversary, and
Season 32, but 20 years, just in case you got confused.
so what do is we wrangle some local Austinites. I feel like that's the most important label for you guys.
Yes.
But also season 5 contestants, season 31 winners, Colin and Christy.
Yes.
Thanks for
you,
coming
guys.
and hanging out with us for a few minutes.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having us. So, Kate and I feel that we should be contestants on The Amazing Race because we do have an excellent partnership, and we're very good at communicating. I mean, did you guys feel that going into season 5? Were you ready for the way that the partnership would be tested going into the first season?
At the time, we had been together 2 years, just graduated college, and I don't think we had any idea what that type of stress and strain would be on the relationship and how it would test kind of the alpha and the beta and who's the leader, et cetera, which of course we got to dive in deep right off the bat, right? And then we had 15 years to learn and integrate that. Go back
And parent.
and parent,
Yep.
and then go back on for season 31.
Because
and
season
win.
5, like, how much did you know about it? I mean,
Yeah.
4 seasons of Amazing Race have been out. Like, why'd you apply, and what did you think it would be?
She was Miss Teen USA when she was 19?
18, 19, yeah.
And so she used to get recruited for these reality shows. But she was acting. She was in a TV series at the time called New Adventures of Robin Hood, or had just filmed that, and she was doing different commercials and stuff. And so she always just like defaulted to like no on reality shows, because back then real actors didn't do reality shows. But she got this call about this Amazing Race where you travel, and she was like, oh, another reality show called me today. It's called Amazing. And we hadn't heard of it, because I guess the 4th season was maybe just getting ready to air or something like that. And the first few seasons, I don't think it was like a huge show.
I can't imagine.
But I looked it up, and I was like, oh my God, this looks amazing. We're going to travel around the world
Amazing,
and get to
right?
bungee jump, and skydive, and do all these cool things.
Yeah.
So yeah, we said, hey, we should send in a tape.
And Colin is literally made for The Amazing Race. Like, I would argue that he is definitely
I
the
think
best contestant, the best player of Amazing Race
There's
in
a
Amazing
quote.
Race history.
Didn't you have a quote of saying that you would be like the most competitive?
The most intense.
No,
the most
intense.
Colin. Here we are, the 40.
I was fairly intense.
He
I
was
think I
intense.
did
What do
I think
you-
he fulfilled that.
silly of a comment as it
Yes.
might have been.
What do you think makes a good pair or a good contestant, either an individual or together?
I think you said the communication is absolutely key. For us, going back on season 31, the main thing was realizing that at any given moment, one of you may be triggered into some type of nervous system overwhelm. And if you can learn to hold space for the other and kind of be the leader in that moment and have a little bit of compassion for your partner, rather than intensifying that experience, they then find their way back into alignment, and then you're back on. So we really did that for each other in season 31, and it made all the difference in the world. I mean, we came in second in season 5. So, I mean, it really made all the difference for 31.
I also have a question that I think you will find important that my sister-in-law, who's a big fan, asked me, which she's always been very curious when you eat.
Oh, it's a very important question.
Yeah, you know, there's definitely times when you're like, oh my God, it's been, 12 hours, 15 hours, and we haven't had anything to eat. But in general, especially the newer seasons, it's actually abundant time to eat.
Okay.
You're waiting at this train station, or you're waiting
For them
this
to say go.
flight.
Okay.
And really, in the past, the legs were much longer. In season 5, it would be normal for a leg to last 2 or 3 days. That you're traveling across the world. And you're figuring it out on your own. I think now they've gotten a lot more efficient with their production. They keep it a lot tighter, and so a lot of times, like, all the teams are on the same flight, and then you basically land in a new city. And that race in that city might be 3 to 7 hours. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you've eaten just before you start
Right.
the race. So it's
Okay.
really like the food thing, especially the second time around. The first time around, it was more.
We were skin and bones when we came home.
Well, because that's also when you might break down communication. Like, if you're hungry, like...
tired.
Definitely.
We were. It was much easier to be like very worn down and tired.
Yeah.
The first time around.
Because they also, in between each leg, it was either 12 hours or 24 hours, and they were pretty strict on that.
Almost always 12.
And usually 12. Season 31, it's not so much.
Not as much that
I kind of got set up in a little bit more cush hotel and had a little bit longer. and of course, our behind the scenes, which was we do a lot of meditation and quantum visualization, et cetera, et cetera. So we were able to really focus on that and intend how we wanted each leg of the race to go.
Oh, that's nice.
Whereas A, we knew nothing about that in season 5, and B, probably wouldn't have had the time to really strategically plan in that way like we were in 31.
So Colin, you were mentioning a few minutes ago before we went on that you can kind of get, because I was asking about as we were getting mic'd up, mics and like how that really works during the actual filming, because at some point they may get in your way. But you also then started saying something very interesting about you could tell by the way they were micing you and what was on the mics what the type of challenge it might be.
Yeah, that's right. And you know, their audio video, their cameramen and their audio, you know, men and women are just like the best in the world. I mean, they are incredible, and so they're so fast at taking care of all the, you know, audio video needs. But you learn over time, sometimes they would put a recorder on you as well. So they had wireless mics, but then sometimes it looked like a wireless mic, but it was just a recorder. And so you know that either you're gonna get really far away from the wireless transmitter, and then they would put the recorder in a condom and then rubber band it so that it would be waterproof. And so that would be a really good indication that like, oh, okay, we're going to probably do something that's really physical, or we're going to be getting wet, or we're going to be getting super muddy, you know, where they think that the wireless mic may fail during the challenge, and they want to have a backup recording.
When you're only getting one clue at a time, you're looking for anything, to kind of give you some idea, to get mentally prepared for what's about to happen.
And they say that on the panel, they talk about, I think the question was asked, what is the mistake people keep making that you're like, come on, we're this many seasons into it, and it's read the entire clue. Read the whole clue.
And I think, you know, and people always say that, right? And that was going to be my answer to you earlier, like what makes a good team on The Amazing Race. It's finding calm in the storm. And you can read the whole clue 5 times, but if you're not calm and you're not actually taking in the information, you can read it out loud over and over and over and just not be getting it. Because your mind is so is reeling so fast, and it's processing so much about I'm on the show, and oh my God, I'm gonna look stupid, and what's happening here? You know, just and look at them, they're running off there. Oh, okay, read the clue. You know, like, it must be that way. And like, so you can keep reading it, but you're not getting it. Like, you have to just say, like, no matter how crazy it is, what's going on, just take a second and understand, like, what is my goal? What am I trying to accomplish next? And then go do that as fast as you can. But so it's that balance of slow, fast.
Very few teams know how to do that, and that really is a skill set. So we would notice at the end of a leg, everyone who made it, of course, right? It would just be in this euphoric high. Everyone's excited, everyone's best friends. And then as the next leg of the race, suddenly everybody's all shifty-eyed, and we'd call it, ooh, everybody's getting their lizard brain. And that's when you knew it was like this. And again, it's like, how much can your nervous system handle? And most people, and I think that they're purposefully casting people who aren't necessarily prepared.
You don't want people that are going to be calm the whole time. That's not great TV.
I mean, we kind of were
Come
boring
on.
in season 31, I think, because we had figured that out. I think when they cast us and brought us back for All Stars, they were really hoping to find the Colin and Christy of season 5.
You're like, we've been married for 15 years. We've got children. This is like a whole different show.
Yeah, we're actually excited and on vacation. And I kind of like having one clue at a time because it forces you to be in the present moment.
Right.
I do love, season 31 was a vacation. Season 5 was an intense reality competition show, and now you're like, we're just adventuring across the world.
Like a super fun thing that we got to do.
They also on the panel talk about everyone's edit, and did you get a good edit? So, I mean, 1 in general, but 2, season 5 versus 31, like, do you feel you guys got a good edit?
We do. I think it helps when you win. We got a very good edit in season 31. And also, we just knew better, and we really were kind of rather boring and probably didn't give them a whole lot. In season 5, Colin was the villain of the show. I think he was the original villain.
Did you know? Did you like know that
I
like
knew
you
he
wanted
had
to?
no clue. I said, by the way, you're the villain. What?
Did you tell him in the middle people filming you tell them.
Yeah, I go, you're the villain. I can tell by the questions they're asking. I can tell
that's
by
so
what
funny.
they're focusing on in the OTFs, on the flies. And actually, I mean, we were helping other teams. He had the same heart as he has now, but you can just tell, and of course, we end up in second place, and we won, we dominated, and then end up in second place. So it just sort of, the story arc, and I will say the editing was so brilliant on season 5, like to this day, my personal opinion is that is the best season of Amazing Race.
A lot
all
of
time.
places list that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, and I love. I mean, coming out of it as the villain, did people treat you differently as they would see you and you would be out and about? Were they?
They're super, super nice when they meet you. And they just like.
And then you see on Twitter.
It's like very, very few people very few people would actually be like, you know, I wasn't a fan of how you were on the show, and then walk off. Like, and I was like, wow, awesome,
Okay.
thank you.
At least you said it's my face if you did.
Maybe 3 people ever, you know, but you know, there was plenty.
But you did get
know.
letters in the mail
yeah,
for
it was-
being the
yeah,
ugly American,
for sure.
and certain things that they would show, and certain things that they had kind of edited out, which definitely I will say
They amplified the ammunition.
it's amplified exactly.
Well, I have to say, you weren't there when we were talking about this, but as we go into the Amazing Race panel, I want to talk to you about just TV instead of just the Amazing Race. And you were saying, what should you be watching? Tell us what your favorite show is right now.
Schitt's Creek, 100%. Oh my God.
This is why she brought it up, because I just watched it.
What is the hole that they can fill Schitt's Creek with? I did tell them about Sunday. But
Oh yes. Kevin can F himself. We'll still say that. We no holds bar on the actual panel because of how you actually say the title, but just for now. Which I start the panel by saying we all have an Annie Murphy size hole in our hearts. And even though she's very different from Alexis in this show, it's still, I just start Schitt's Creek.
I also told them, like, I don't know when, but we can basically commit to the fact that there will be a reunion of that show here in Austin at some point.
We are committing to that. No one else is committed to that, just so we're all clear.
Are committed.
We have committed to that.
Yeah.
It's just so good. It just like fits all.
So good.
I do want to know not worst challenge, but
The one that keeps you up at night.
Yeah, the hardest challenge, the one that you're like, ooh, and then favorite, not necessarily that you won, but just like this was the most fun challenge to do, if you can.
Yeah, hardest was season 5.
Yeah, I would say the hardest was eating the caviar in season 5. That was a roadblock, and literally in Russia, 2.2 pounds of caviar, and
You really know
all
how
they
to
had
ruin
was
a good
Russian
thing.
vodka to wash that down with. So you're shoveling salt in your
a bowl like
mouth
this
and
big.
you're washing it down with
a
alcohol.
pile.
I mean, it was very, very difficult for every single contestant except for one to get through. Big giant, guy,
sure.
oh man. But anyway, that was probably my least favorite and the most difficult.
And you can't eat it, probably. Can you?
No, I
Like-
don't really eat much caviar anymore.
Fair.
And what was our favorite?
Favorite? You just
I mean, the sledging in New Zealand, season 5, was pretty amazing. Going down these level 5 rapids with a boogie board and a face mask and flippers.
What kind of mic did you have at that moment?
didn't you really know it's going to be a crazy?
That's true.
Forget the mic. You're like,
But I would say in season 31, the Switzerland leg,
Yes.
all these different adventures. We did helicopter rides by glaciers. We did mountaineering, where we're like, canyoneering, working our way through these canyons with rappelling and swimming and.
That's right up our alley. Like
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
that's super action-packed adventure, we're all about it.
She did the canyon swing there in Switzerland. That leg was really
Yeah.
cool.
so
kinda
you
like
really
bungee
feel like
jumping.
you get to see, they talk about musicians or actors when they have to travel and do things, they say that they don't really get to see the country. Like you really feel like you're with the people. It's
You're there-
fast.
You're there
but
for a very short amount of time,
Yeah.
but the whole point is to show the world
Yeah.
this country
Yeah.
through your experience.
Yeah.
So I think we get to experience these countries as much as you possibly can in a day or two.
Yeah, in
You know
the
what I mean?
tightest.
Like,
Yeah.
it's the tightest, and they do like off the beaten path stuff. You know what I mean? You're gonna
Yeah.
go to some random like herb
Which is the
market,
best, because that's what people want to
Yes.
know. They don't
Yes.
just want the tourist things.
Yeah.
They
Right.
want the how to immerse yourself.
Yeah, they're definitely not doing the tourist thing. I will give the show
Yeah.
credit
They're
for
so
that.
good
They
with that.
are finding the thing that is specific and local, and
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
pretty nice.
it's like if Austin was a final city, we'd be like, that's great because we have a leg up, we know Austin, but like chances are the challenges that we're going to do are going to be like, I didn't know this existed in Austin.
Yeah.
I've lived here for 20 years.
Yeah.
You know, like it's little things.
There's some cave somewhere that we've never been inside.
Yeah, or that I've heard of.
Yeah.
Like, why didn't I go to that tour? You know?
So as we have to wrap up so we can get to the panel, I feel like that's a great note to end on of we are now going to be searching for challenges in Austin. And so next year, 2022 festival, when everyone is here, we're going to find some sort of Amazing Race challenge.
Amazing.
Liability, can't even understand what that insurance is going to be. We're going to figure it out.
CBS knows, not us.
Thank you all so much for being here and hanging out with us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
And everyone else, enjoy the panel.
Michael Schneider from Variety moderates.
Good job.
Thanks. You're welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Caitlin and Emily. I'm so excited to be back here at ATX Season 10, the ATX TV Festival, always a favorite for me. I'm sad that we're virtual, but nonetheless, I'm so excited about this panel. Hi, everyone. I'm Variety Senior Editor Michael Schneider, and I am here to celebrate the 20th anniversary of my favorite reality show of all time, The Amazing Race. We've got some past winners and racers. We've got the one and only Phil Koeghan coming up. 20th anniversary. They've been to 91 countries. They've been nominated for 81 Emmys, 15 wins, including 10 for Outstanding Reality Competition Series. This is the show. And why don't we bring him on right now, the Feliminator himself, the one and only host of The Amazing Race, Mr. Phil Koeghan. Phil, join me.
Good morning. Thank you for the memo about wearing the blue shirt. I expect that everybody who's on this morning will be wearing the blue shirt. I don't know why you wanted all of us to be wearing blue shirts, but I got the memo. I got the blue shirt on. I'm ready to go.
Got the memo.
I read my clue. Yes.
You did read the clue. Phil, that is rule number one.
It is rule number one. It is. Absolutely the most important thing you can do on The Amazing Race is read your clue. And for those who don't read their clue, they literally have no clue, and they get lost, and they sometimes get they fall behind, and they get eliminated.
Is that, after doing the show for 20 years, is that the thing that still surprises you the most now, when people just sort of make a mistake like that, a simple mistake, not reading the clue as faithfully as they should have?
Well, first thing I want to say is anybody who comes on The Amazing Race, I have to applaud them. I really respect that these contestants will put themselves out there, allow us to examine them under a microscope. And, the simple things sometimes get lost in the pressure of the race with the heat and jet lag and sleep deprivation. So sometimes the most simple things get forgotten. People, they get out of sorts. They don't operate in the same way. And so that's the thing that you don't see on the show, or that we can explain, is what happens when you shoot 12 shows in roughly 21 days now. In the very beginning, I think it was 32. What happens when people are put under that kind of pressure? They forget the simple things, and one of the simple things is literally reading your clue. It's there. The information you need is right there, but sometimes they just sort of charge ahead without thinking about that clue.
Or when they lose that clue and they got to go back.
Oh, they lose the clue, yeah. Or they run past the clue, and there's those great shots that the camera operators get where they show the person running past the clue, and then they get the shot of the clue box, and they're not allowed. The camera operators are not allowed to tell the teams, "Hey guys, you just ran past the clue." So,
yeah, my son, who's now a super fan as well, always jokes that, like, just watch the camera person. If they're suddenly panning away and looking at something, what are they looking at? Maybe they're showing us something that you should be paying attention to.
Yep, that's a very smart move. Like, you definitely want to keep an eye on what the camera operator is shooting. If I shouldn't be saying that, but anyway, no, it's a good idea.
It's not on you. So you celebrated 1 million miles. It's still hard to believe 20 years later. Have you gone back and watched the first season? Have you sort of gone back to reminisce at all at what that first year looked like?
Well, someone flashed it up the other day, and first of all, I was like, "Wow, who's that boy? That little boy?" Oh, it was me. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of it's bizarre looking at it. It's like watching a time lapse. I've had people say to me, that they've binged watched through this whole COVID time every single season from beginning to end. And they literally have watched me age like in a time lapse. And, back then we were shooting in standard definition. So the quality of, and we were 4:3 frame. And so the quality of the image was very low, and my definition was very low. Now I'm becoming highly defined with lines, and so is television becoming highly defined with lines. And so it just seems like a cruel trick that both television and myself are becoming more highly defined. I'm not really sure that, Michael, whether people really want to see that kind of high definition.
But nonetheless, it's sort of as we watch you progress through those seasons, you become looser. You're having more fun asking the contestants questions. I love the season when you just started popping up in the middle of running behind you, and they're like, "Hi, Phil, what's up?"
Yeah.
How would you say your kind of involvement on camera and just in general with the show evolved as the show evolved?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I've done other projects outside of Amazing Race, and people have said to me, "Oh, I didn't realize you were, like you joke around like that," or they've seen other sides of my personality. I mean, on Amazing Race, it's about it is about the contestants. It's about their experience, but I think personalities or people hosting shows also do influence the tone and the feel of the show. So I think just over time, people have got that used to that continuity of having me there, just like people probably can't imagine Survivor without Jeff Probst. He's become an integral part of the show. So I like it. I like that that I'm able to have fun with the teams, and as the teams will attest, I interview them all at the mat extensively for long periods of time, and sometimes the questions that I ask don't get shown on the screen, but the answers get used. So, at the end of the day, my job is to facilitate and to keep the show moving and to update the audience. But I do like when there's fun moments, and people do notice subtle things, like going back to season 1, when I raised my eyebrow, I just sort of did it. I wasn't consciously doing it, but I grew up with Steve Austin, the $6 million man. And my favorite move of his was when he put his eye up, for the bionic eye. And there's probably a lot of people listening like, who the hell is the $6 million man? Back in the day, yeah, Google it, because back in the day, Steve Austin, Lee Majors, he played the role of Steve Austin, but Lee Majors was like a big star. And I loved his eyebrow. So I had always done it as a kid, and I inadvertently did it. And when we did season 2, the network executive said to me, "Hey, I hope you did the raised eyebrow." And I'm like, "The raised eyebrow?" And he's like, "Yeah, the thing you did at the beginning, the beginning of season 1. I'm like, so now it's like people expect the raised eyebrow.
Now it's in your contract, right? It's a certain
it's like
eyebrow.
But I can only do it so many times a day because the muscles get very sore around here, Michael. There's only so many raised eyebrows.
You need to protect that eyebrow, man. You gotta insure it or something.
The browsy, yeah.
So I know you get asked this all the time, but the hairiest moment in 20 years on Amazing Race, the hairiest moment for you in terms of like you weren't sure if you were going to make it to the mat in time, you're racing against the contestants to get there, or you got stopped at customs somewhere. Was there a moment that you remember still that was for you kind of a little dicey?
Yeah, I think that's always a surprising thing to a lot of fans, is just how much of a race it is for us as production to try to stay ahead. And we had, as I mentioned in the beginning in season 1, we had a little bit more time because it was spread out over around 32 days. Now we're down to sometimes 21 days. And when you cut that amount of time out of making the same number of episodes, actually season 1 had 13 episodes. Now we're mostly doing 12, but we're going so much faster. So yeah, it gets very hairy. You're on the same planes as people. I have to go to the same places they have to go to. I happen to have directions, but that doesn't mean that we don't get lost. Even though we do have directions, we get lost. So I have to kind of get the introductions done and try to stay ahead. Doesn't always happen. I did get held up in in immigration in Ukraine in season 10 and was held in a room overnight. I didn't know there were a whole bunch of people in the room with me. So I slept on some plastic chairs, and thankfully there was somebody from the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine who was a big Amazing Race fan, and she worked all night to get me a visa. That's one of the problems, I guess, with having a New Zealand passport sometimes. So they didn't think that I had the rights to come in. And so I literally ran to the mat. And as I was running to the mat, the teams were coming from the other direction. Many of those situations, changing directions where I remember once we had some shows lined up in Argentina, and the night before there was some political unrest. We couldn't go to Argentina, and we had to scramble and, rewrite the scripts on the road. So I write the scripts. And so then it's like, you want to sleep on the flight. We ended up doing another show to South Africa, in South Africa. So you want to sleep, but no, I was up all night, like writing the scripts for that next show. And so was everybody else up all that night, by the way, working on what the challenges were going to be and how we were going to do it. And, you had less testing time to get the stuff done. So it's constantly frantic behind the scenes. And I think I'm always surprised by people who are surprised by how bad I look by the end of the race. People are like, "Oh my God, you look like you were so tired and, you looked exhausted." And I'm like, well, yeah, because I was tired and I was exhausted. What do you think this is? Like some kind of studio show, like where we're, it's like some kind of dance or singing competition, and I'm going home every night and crawling into a nice, comfortable bed. It doesn't happen all the time. We'll go days without sleeping. And so, yeah, your brain, it does weird, just like with the contestants, it does weird things when you don't have sleep and you don't get a proper night's sleep.
Yeah, that jet lag by now. Are you sort of just used to it, or does that still knock you out?
Well, that reminds me of my good friend Scott, who was a camera operator on Amazing Race for years. These guys are running around with a camera that weighs 25 to 30 pounds, plus they're carrying everything they have on their back, and they're trying to keep up with the teams. They're running ahead to get the teams running towards them. They're running alongside them. These guys are phenomenal athletes and just incredible endurance. And people say that to my friend, said that to my friend Scott. "Oh, you must just get used to it." He's like, "No, the camera still weighs 25 pounds to 30 pounds. The backpack I'm carrying still weighs the same. I don't know about used to it. I tolerate it." And so, yeah, as far as jet lag goes, I don't know if you get used to it. You just put up with it. There is what are you going to do? There's no other choice. You just put up with it. But no, I don't think there's such a thing. I mean, if you're tired, you're tired. If you're jet lagged, you're jet lagged. It's not like you build up a resistance to it. You're still human, It's like you're tired, you're exhausted.
Well, Phil, speaking of hairy moments, obviously the big story for the show is you guys are still on pause. You've been on pause now for a year since the pandemic. You were the first show really to sort of have to shut down in the middle of a leg, in the middle of early taping of a new season. What was that like when you had to sort of just put pause, and it's a year later now? That's got to be a little frustrating to sort of still be on pause, and I'm sure you're hopeful to get back at some point soon, but take me back to that moment.
Well, Bertram, our executive producer, was not comfortable with what was going on. We were monitoring what was happening. CBS were monitoring what was happening. No one really knew. And, in the beginning, there were definitely some people that thought we were being overly cautious. Like, really? You're going to stop the race? Like, shut it down? This thing, we didn't know the extent of it. We didn't know that we'd be a year later and still talking about this virus. Nobody really knew, but our number one priority, and I think when you talk to the teams, I think, they'll all agree, our goal is to get people out to do this race and get them home safely. Like, we breathe a huge sigh of relief when we get everybody home safely. The last thing we need, and we've done this now for 32 seasons and started the 33rd, is to make sure that that we're making a television show at the end of the day, and we want people to get home safely. So that was what was involved with regards to this virus. We couldn't guarantee that people would be safe. So that's where the decision came from. But it was gut-wrenching. I mean, you've got people who have given up part of their lives. They've had to take time off work and made huge sacrifices to be there in that moment for a once in a lifetime experience. It's gut-wrenching to have to tell them, I'm sorry, this is all going to end right now. We don't know when it's going to happen again. And, there's no guarantee that when we reset that everybody who was there is going to be able to come back. How do we know that they're going to be able to come back to their job? So yeah, it was gut-wrenching. Okay. Yeah. And I want to say, Michael, to the race fans, thank you for your patience. Thank you for, we've accumulated some new fans because they've been binge watching, but I just want to say to our amazing race fans, we are absolutely chomping at the bit to get back to give you more Amazing Race, and we will do it as soon as we possibly can. We will be back. That's a fact. We will be back. It's just a matter of when. But thank you to all our race fans for sticking with us, because we have people who have stuck with us through thick and thin, through the good times and the bad times, and we appreciate that kind of loyalty. It means a lot.
Yeah, and I think this show is going to mean even more to folks as the world opens up again, and you can once again celebrate the beauty of the world, the beauty of travel, the beauty of getting out and seeing other people. Well, why don't we bring out some of the fan favorite racers as well? Right now, going back, the OG winners from season 1, Rob and Brennan.
Look, they still look as young as they always did. Look at the two of them.
20 years later, we're still in our 20s.
Exactly.
We have from season 14, the winning siblings, Victor and Tammy.
Hey.
Hi.
Hi, everyone.
You know them, you love them. The Afghanimals from season 23, from All Stars, from season 31 as well, Leo and Jamal.
What's up, fellas and ladies? How's it going?
Thank you for having us.
Jamal, look at that tie. Look at that tie. Where are you? Wow,
I'm at work.
You're coming up in the world.
Turns out this panel is a deposition where we're all Jamal's actually.
There's enough lawyers here.
Yes, we're the ones that are supposed to be wearing ties.
And finally, from season 25, the best friends, Amy and Maya.
Oh.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
Come on in. So, first off, how well do you all know each other? Is there like the massive Amazing Race group text? What's sort of this community like? And as it continues,
I know Brennan.
Well, and
I
I guess
know the old people. I know the old people. So I know Brennan. I know.
Yeah.
I don't think I've met Leo and Jamal or Amy and Maya, but I think Brennan worked down the street from me.
Yeah, I think going back, being from season 1, we've had a chance to meet everybody over the years. I think Amy's actually the only one I've never met, but it does. Victor's right. I think it does tend to be some of the more old school seasons. We all met each other around that time, and now we don't meet necessarily the newer school folks, whatever you want to call them. But people meet from time to time for sure, and there's definitely kind of I guess we'll say an Amazing Race family.
Well, so Rob and Brennan, take me back to that first season, and you've had time to sort of see how the show has progressed. When you look back at that first season and compare it to the Amazing Race now, what strikes you? Is it the longer time on the road? Is it the fact that you didn't get to see Phil at the mat?
Or you didn't want to see Phil at the mat?
I think people ask us this a lot, and if you look back on it, I think Phil will agree. I mean, it was just really raw. I mean, none of us knew what we were doing. People that do it now later in seasons can look back and watch and see what they're going to be out there doing. But we were just kind of thrown into the world, literally. And I think production, as well as the contestants, was kind of like, what are we doing?
And I think for me now, looking at how the race is run, the biggest change, and I don't know if it's because it doesn't make as good television or what, but we actually had to book flights. There was a lot of airport drama. And I feel like the race at the beginning, the first number of seasons, it was about the travel. And it was about how are you going to get to the next place because it's the Amazing Race. It's a travel, it's racing around the world. Now I feel like the race is focused more on the tasks, and it's easy to get from place to place sometimes. And then maybe it's because it makes better television, people performing tasks versus people trying to book a flight. But that's the biggest change in my mind.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of it too has to do with the fact that there's a lot more people traveling now than there were in 2000. So a lot of flights were empty. You know, there were a lot of international flights where planes weren't, you know, completely booked up. But that's changed dramatically now. So it's you know, like I was saying before, people take travel a little bit for granted now. It's, you know, maybe it'll be different after COVID. I hope.
Yeah. Well, also I wonder if just as the technology has evolved and it's sort of easier to book flights than it
Yes,
was.
it's so different.
Well, now we have the Travelocity app, right?
Yeah,
Brennan and Rob, I watched with my son who's 6, and we watched season 1, episode 1, and he was very confused. He said, "Why don't these people use their phones? Why don't they just look on their phones to see where they're going?" So that I feel like is one big change.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But my
Well,
sister,
we
like
did
her
grab a phone at
kids,
the end.
my sister's kids, she has yet to tell them we have been on TV. She's been protecting it from them, and slowly it's going to be unveiled within the next few months, I think.
Very wise.
As you binge all the seasons, so you're going
Well-
to get to season 14.
I'm trying, except they're 6 and 4, so they made their way through maybe like 20 minutes of season 1, episode 1, and then they ran off. So it's going to take me quite a bit of time to make my way to season 14.
Well, Tammy and Victor, are you used to seeing cheese? You know, does it still sort of haunt you when you see like big rolls of cheese, like, or have you managed to move past that?
I've moved past it, and now instead of carrying big wheels of cheese in my arms, I try to carry it in my stomach. You know, I've got like pandemic cheese eating skills. Yeah.
But there's always the moments that people remember. I'm sure people still bring that up to the two of you when they discover that, oh yeah, you're the two from The Amazing Race.
No, what they bring up,
sure.
I remember that season, I thought all of the episodes, we had another big mountain. Every episode felt like a big mountain. And then, of course, our bad one was for me at least, was the Romanian mountains. And so what people bring up to me is the fact that, you know, I was such an idiot. No, it's actually been funny. People come up, it's crazy, depending on if they have an older sibling or a younger sibling, they automatically remember our dynamic and exactly who was right, and have very diverging viewpoints. So I can't wait for my sister's kids to start watching that episode. And so I convinced her they're never going to make it to the end of season 1. Just skip to season 14 is what I would say.
Yeah.
Well, Leo and Jamal, you two are probably two of the most recognizable contestants ever, partly because you've done more legs than anyone else, and you've just been fan favorites. What continues to be that experience when people sort of run into you and say, "Hey, it's the Afghanimals"? And do they critique your performance? Do they say, "Oh man, you guys, like, we're still rooting for you. You got to come back and finally win it all"? What's sort of the reaction from Amazing Race fans?
It's funny because even at work, I still get recognized, and the fans still want us to come back for a 4th time, and I'm like, I don't know about that. I was like, I'm getting old. I was like, I'm a father now, growing a little belly, but it's still, they see us as that fun team, energetic, crazy, wild, out there, just living their life, and it was always a positive attitude, So, I mean, it's been a positive engagement with our fans throughout the years.
Yeah, we've been truly blessed because we always had a good time. That was one of our biggest motives, and that's why we relate to so many fans and why they loved us. They always come up to us and they're like, "Dude, we loved how you guys ran their race. You guys were just having fun." It was a lot less stress on looking at the finish line, but more of looking the whole experience through the episode and like making sure we took it all in. And that's why a lot of people, I think, took a liking to us.
Michael, a lot of times teams will sneak up on us on the mat. We won't know. They just come out of the bushes, or they just come from, like, how the hell did they get here? Nobody gave us any warning. But with the Afghanimals, there was never any doubt that they were arriving at the mat. Like, from 3 miles away, it'd be like, this Afghanimal cry that we would hear and be like, oh, boy, brace yourself. And that it would last for like 10 minutes. We would hear them way down the mountain, like, here come the Afghanimals.
You see birds flying out the trees, stampede. It's just all the animals. It's the presence. You feel the bump in your chest.
We had to make it known, and that's why production always loved us, because like they knew that when we were around, that it was a lot of fun, and we had to keep Phil on his toes,
You did.
What was it like by the third time? I mean, does it become easier? Was there a little more of an ease when you're racing and exactly how this works, or is it still as stressful that third time around?
I would say the third time, of course, it wasn't as stressful because it was like riding a bike. As soon as we got back on it, like all these like sort of tricks and sort of little moves that we had, we started doing it again, and it was like really really fun. But the more of the stress on this last time was like all these other teams from different shows, so like Big Brother and Survivor, and you didn't know what to expect and how their characters would clash with the Amazing Race characters. So I would say the third time was definitely less stressful in one regard, but still you still have the stress with the flights and the taxi, so it's always there, but like maybe like 2 notches less.
Yeah. Well, Amy and Maya, first off, I know what was kind of cool about fans seeing you on the show was inspiring young female scientists to sort of do the kinds of things that we saw you do. But first, Amy, tell me about running this race when you were injured a good chunk of the season. That's still badass.
Yeah, it wasn't ideal. About a week before we left for New York, I just thought I pulled a muscle running, but apparently it was significantly worse than that. I actually went to a doctor the day we got back and learned out I had a whole bunch of cracks in my hip. So I pretty much ran the entire thing with a slightly fractured pelvis, which thinking back was probably silly because I still have a bit of hip pain, but work. I think that was the thing for us. We just wanted to take advantage of the opportunity and make it work. So Maya and I figured out from leg 1, we were very strategic with how we were approaching challenges. So when it got to roadblocks or some of the detours, it's like, which ones are we more likely to be successful with? So there was like a pancake race around in the UK, which we knew like running, maybe let's hold off if we can. And we tried to do the same with the roadblocks. Part of the reason I did the first roadblock was because I already knew that my pain was going to get worse throughout. So it just was something we built into how we ran. I think we'd run very differently now. But it worked.
But it worked. It worked the way we did run. So it's like, should we change it? I don't know. It totally
I don't know that I need to break my hip again. So
I mean, it might worth it, wasn't it? Maybe.
Well, that's like whenever anyone brings up any kind of mistake we made during the race, or when you say you wouldn't change anything, all you have to say is end is we won. So you wouldn't change anything, right?
Yeah, I think.
Afghanimals, is that what you say?
No, we would say
3-time losers.
Some people only got 1 shot and they won, Afghanimals. You guys.
You got 3, but the winners, we only get 1 shot. They don't ask us to come back. So it's
exactly.
That's so true. That's so true.
Yeah. We you know us, we wanted to see Phil 3 times. That's all.
Okay. There's a question. Would you rather take a victory once or get to race 3 times without a victory?
Oh,
question.
Very good question. I would do it 3 times. Like experiences, memories, 100%.
I would be a winner. Come on.
I'd race twice.
We've won in so many other ways, so it's all good.
Yeah.
The experiences, the people we met, all the countries we went to, all the stuff we did. No, 3 times for me.
I'll take the money. Stop lying. I'll take the money.
Now you use cryptocurrency and you make that much money in a day, so it's all good.
You could go down in history as the team that took the most times to win, right? In an Amazing Race. You
just have to go back for a 4th time. Just have to go back once more. Come on, Jamal. You can do it.
I'll go with my daughter this time. By that time, she old enough.
You're right.
Yeah, pretty soon there'll be racers who weren't even born when we did.
Yeah,
that's true.
I mean, right?
So whenever the final season is, one of the teams should be Phil. Phil and somebody should just have to race it.
Bertram, let's go.
I admire all of you guys for doing it. You know, like I said to Michael, I think, and maybe you guys could speak to this, but you know, we've all done it when we watch sports and we all yell at the quarterback and we yell at the basketball player who does a bad pass or whatever. Oh man, I can't believe you did that. Why didn't you pass the ball to something? But you guys know from being under pressure, sleep deprived, out there in crazy heat, what it does to you. Maybe you could speak to that, because that sometimes that just doesn't come across on TV, like how hard that is to actually think while you're trying to get ahead, and the pressure of all of that, you know?
Well, I think it goes back to
like you said earlier, read the clue.
Yeah, right. when Mike asked you earlier about reading the clue, I mean, it just happened in season 32. There was one challenge where half the teams didn't read the clue. And I guess it just shows how much pressure teams are under, how fast you want to go. You think you read the clue. You don't realize that you didn't read the whole thing. And it's so easy for the armchair quarterbacks on the Amazing Race Facebook groups to sit back and say, how can you go on the race, watch 32 seasons, and you're not reading your clue? But yet it continues to happen over and over again. And that really is the exact same thing as some professional athlete who's been doing whatever it is all their life, making some big mistake like that.
Yeah.
And I think part of the race, sorry, Tammy.
No, go ahead.
I think part of the race is too that it's so much more mental than people really think it is. There's so much on the mental aspect, and that's why I think Amy and I really did well, because so much of who we are was mental. I mean, we're not the strongest, the biggest, and we were up against the wrestlers, the dentists who were professional bodybuilders, the firefighters. I mean, we were up against some, really strong, physically strong teams, but the mental aspect is what everyone underestimates often, and it doesn't necessarily transfer through the screen as well. But once you're able to talk to contestants and really dissect the Amazing Race, which is actually what Amy and I did before we went on, we literally studied why there were only 2 female teams to win before, and we were like, we're not going to make those mistakes. We made other mistakes, but again, it's so much more mental than it is physical, I think. And I don't know, I would love to hear everyone else's opinion, but I think the mental doesn't get as much light as the physical does.
Yeah,
I totally agree. It's kind of similar to what makes elite athletes really good too. It's not just that they're physically strong, it's that they have the mental toughness. And for me, I wouldn't say it's, when you look at what strings all winners, what's similar about all winners, it's the tenacity, right? Like, you're gonna mess up, you're gonna not be first, you're gonna like totally go the wrong way. It's kind of that mental tenacity to brush it off and just keep going.
I think actually there's an element of the partnership or the relationship that unfortunately doesn't get aired. And what I mean by it is it's easy to watch the show and say, well, why would you do that? Or to say, well, that's stupid, you shouldn't have done that. But it's inevitable, as Tammy said, every one of us is going to make a mistake, and it's going to be a horribly stupid mistake. It's just going to happen. To me, what was interesting was sort of even off camera, how do you support your partner to make them not beat themselves up and to be ready to go on or to get the best out of each other? And I think for us, we learned a lot about, like, even after my horrible mistake, a lot of what me and my sister talked about was, well, why did you sell me down the river for the interviews? Like, I just felt unsupported in the interviews, and you threw me up like to get killed, and how do I realize how we can interact with each other behind the scenes so that people can do better the next one? That, I think, has been for us a lot of the huge difference between doing well the next leg or not. And I think, unfortunately, you can't really see that all the time, but I think that ends up being one of the biggest factors.
Yeah. Well,
it's like a quarterback, right? Like, not only do you have to tune out the fans, you got to avoid getting tackled, you got to look down the field. There's all these other factors going on. It's easy for you to sit on the couch and be like, oh, he should have done this, because on TV, yeah, you see everything, but him, you can't see everything. So like on the show, while you're doing a task, you're sort of seeing where the other teams are. You're seeing the crowd. You're in a different country, different time zone. Like, I remember we were in Norway and it's like 2 a.m. and like that took such a toll on everyone, because it's like sunny outside, and like we're doing these difficult challenges, and it's our first time on the show, and it's like it's so easy to make a right versus a left, because like you're just looking at all the other factors and everything else that's going on.
Yeah, the stress of the airport and the travel definitely doesn't always translate. I know for our season, it was like leg 3 before we got any sleep, because we had started in the middle of the night, had some really short pit stops, and so it just you definitely underestimate how tired people really are.
Oh, for sure. There's so much stress in the travel that doesn't always come across on the screen. I know, Brennan, you were talking about that a little bit earlier. The booking flights, getting on the train. I mean, it really does take its toll on you.
And a lot of it isn't aired, right? I was thinking back, Victor, I feel like when one of our first legs, they had us sleeping outside in a manger of some kind, and that never aired, right? And of course, like, well, why do you guys look so busted and tired? And I was like, I slept outside in like a haystack. And one time,
too religious. That was too religious a choice. Sleeping in a manger. Got to keep it neutral. But you know, I think you know, all really valid points. And you think about the compression that has to take place between the start and the end, and then, you know, if you've got 11 teams of 2, you got 22 people, and the dynamics of all of those people and those 11 pairs, and then you're trying to tell a narrative and a story with a beginning, a middle, and end. It's inevitable once you get down to 45 minutes, 44 minutes, and you put the titles on there, and you do the previously on, then the next on, and you start to do all the recaps coming in and out of the breaks. You know, you've got the editorial choices for putting together a show is no way you could put everything in. And then that's also where, you know, I say to people, what you're looking at is a compressed version of somebody's personality, because if you have a sort of tick, or you have a sort of, you get annoyed at something, when you pull out all the stuff in between and those pieces get cut together, it looks like you're, you know, doing that behavior all the time. It's not necessarily that, it's just you're compressing time. So.
Right. Yeah, what was the most shocking thing when you guys went back and watched your seasons? Was something that sort of surprised you in what you saw, either in yourself or in the team, that sort of, you're like, did I do that? Did I say that?
Well, it haunts Brennan. You know what I'm going to say, Brennan. It haunts him for 20 years that he's actually the talker of the two of us. But in the editing, it came out like I was the one doing all the talking.
Well, and it's because Rob is so much more succinct than I am. I actually coincidentally became friends with one of the editors of the show because he was dating a friend of mine. And he said, you just ramble on and on. Rob gives these nice little succinct sound bites. And then every time they needed something from our team, they'd go to Rob's soundbite and be like, Brennan, how come you don't say anything? So yeah, that was the one that got me when going back to watch the show. I was like, how come I'm not saying anything in any of the interviews?
Yeah,
that's funny. It's often a question of, you know, what was your edit like? Like did you get a good edit? That's often a question that people ask. And I would say, even like for Amy and I, and actually everyone on our season 25, the edit was really how everyone was. So I think the editing for season 25 at least was real. I can only speak to that because I was on the season. But Amy and I, in terms of like me being kind of wild and crazy and like jumping on Phil and running around Malta and just like literally nuts, that's literally how I am. And Amy being more mellow and like just really level-headed and like thinking things through before just like going crazy is exactly how she is. So our edit was literally identical to who we are as people, and being able to support each other. Amy and I made sure that we only argued one time. We argued on the second leg and we never argued again, going back to the point of it's not going to work. The dynamic's not going to work if we can't get along. So we got a really good edit. So thank you.
I remember people don't realize that we don't see the episode before the rest of the country does. And in fact, since we're on the West Coast, we see it 3 hours behind everyone else.
Right.
And I remember, like, I honestly would say, I thought the edit, I was scared it would be worse than it was because I remember little things that might have happened. And I remember thinking it was very fair. In fact, I think before some of the episodes, I even like deliberately called my mother and said, let me just tell you what might happen and tell you my side of the story. But it ended up, I thought, being very, very fair to everybody.
But you know, when
a little compressed, but fair.
You know, when people say they're not happy with their edit, it also sometimes is code for, I'm not happy with who I am. I'm not happy with, you know what I mean? Like you have to take some responsibility at some point for, we can't make that behavior up. Like if you're rude to a taxi driver or you're rude to somebody, we're not prompting you to be rude. We're not asking you to have that kind of behavior. There's obviously reasons why that behavior might happen, but you can't make that. We're not scripting this, and you guys will all attest. There are reality shows where people are given lines and told what to say and do certain things. Not on this show. You know, we
not
try
here.
That's like the number one of the number one things we always get. Is it scripted? Is it real? Oh yeah, everything you see we've done, but it's the editing and how they put it together. Like I remember we were in Indonesia and I kept thinking because we had just ate a snake, and I kept thinking that I was seeing snakes everywhere because I think it was like still my stomach moving around. So then they edited it. They kept adding sound bites of a snake sound, and it makes it seem like more real, but like it was all in my head.
Well, you said that so casually, Leo. When I ate a snake, you just said it so casually.
Yeah, when I ate a snake.
Brennan.
Sorry,
Brennan.
No, I was just gonna say the other thing you asked, Mike, was about other teams. We're all talking about our own edits. Of course, like Victor said, we don't get to see anything until the show airs on television. So I'm sure all of us have experiences where you're surprised what another team said about us or what they thought about us. Like, for example, for us, it was Frank and Margarita, the team that came in second. We had a couple little issues with them during the race, but never really thought it was that big a deal. And by the end of the race, they were like bad mouthing us and saying all these things in the finale about us following them. And they're saying, are they lawyers or liars? And we had no idea that they felt that way about us. And of course, that's all said in the interviews or when we're not there. So I'm sure everybody has experiences where they were surprised, like, wow, that team thought that about us, or they said that about us. That's not really what happened.
Yeah,
and the other thing was being able to like laugh at things that were perhaps traumatic at the time. So we had that horrible massage in Singapore.
Amazing massages in Singapore. I loved it. Amy hated us, but I loved them.
Well, she had a sore hip.
Yes.
Have you guys rewatched the ones that were most traumatic for you? Because I have not. Like, I have things that were traumatic and I don't want to watch it again. And now it's like 10 plus years later, I feel like I should be able to, but I still haven't.
You should. It's fun. I hadn't watched our season for years, and then I watched it with my wife when soon after we got married, and it was just a riot. She was laughing at us. I mean, because she knows Brennan as well. So, I mean, with enough time going by, you really should watch it again. It's good fun.
Yeah.
There was one episode. There was one episode in Kota Kinabalu in our second season. I think it was called "Welcome to the Jungle," where I literally thought Leo was going to die. And then looking back at it, I was like, I don't know how we survived that. We had to build a raft out of bamboo sticks and go down this whitewater river, and there's whirlpools, and we got stuck in a couple of places, and our raft just falls apart. Leo's not the best swimmer, but afterwards I'm in the water, we're swimming, we're getting out. Once I get out, one of the locals says they couldn't send any kind of help because it was such a dangerous place. But then he says, start squatting. I said, why? He said, just start squatting. He said, there's leeches in the water. You just want to make sure there's no leeches in you. So, because I was swimming in the water, so I was like, I'm not getting in that water again. It was insane.
We should all make a pledge that we're going to go back to our places of greatest trauma and just say we're going to go back.
I'm not getting another massage.
Brennan, what's your story about when they were telling us? They said something like, "We promise you won't die." That was like the best that production could give us.
Well, that was, in fact, I think we were talking about that with Phil when we did his podcast a couple of years ago, being on the very first season. Like Rob said, we went into the unknown. We didn't know what we were doing. So we've got to pack a backpack for what we think is probably going to be about a month-long trip. And we don't know what's going to happen. And the only instructions that production gave us was, we won't let you die from the elements. And we thought, well, what does that mean? And we thought, okay, maybe if we get in real cold weather, they'll give us a jacket or something. But so we showed up on the first season we had a tent in our backpack. We had a sleeping bag. We had all kinds of things that we figured out within a leg or two we didn't need, and we jettisoned them. But that was something kind of crazy from being on the very first season.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was watching an episode, some highlights yesterday, and you really don't realize, like, even now when I rewatch it, I'm like, dang, we did that. Damn, I said that, because there's so much adrenaline going on. Like, you don't even know what you're doing until you watch the episode. Like, oh, dang, that's nice. So like that 45 minutes is sort of your memory of what it is, because that's what everyone else sees. And then, like, when people say, "Oh, do you remember that?" Like, no, that's exactly what you saw. Now I remember that. You know, it's like when it's going on, it's just so much other factors, and like your blood is pumping, and you just don't realize what you're saying or doing it sometimes.
It must be interesting for you guys, like you were talking about, Brennan, where you don't see the parallel universe that's happening. You know, like you're racing, and then these other things are happening with these other couples. So you think, oh my goodness, we got lost, but then there's somebody else who's getting lost. Maybe it's 3 or 4 teams. And so for me, what's interesting is people assume that I know everything that is happening everywhere. So when you come to the mat, I've had people say to me, "How come you didn't call the twinnies out when they moved the money?" I'm like, because you're seeing something that I didn't see when I talked to them at the mat. I haven't seen the edit either. And maybe somebody didn't tell me. I didn't get that information because we didn't have cell phone service or whatever. So I'm kind of trying to piece together what's going on in that moment. But like the rest of you, it must be very interesting when you finally see it and you go, oh man, I had no idea it was so bad for that other team, you know?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Hey, Tammy, I have to ask you, you mentioned there's a moment that you haven't been able to go back and watch yet. What is it? What's the traumatic moment that you're not ready to see?
All of Romania is traumatic for me. You know, Victor talks about how he feels like I sold him down the river in interviews. I feel awful that I did, but I was so mad. I don't even want to know what it looked like on TV. You know, to be honest, I never even watched that part of the show the first time. I like walked out of the room because I was so mad. And then on top of that, to have to put on a white leotard on national television and try to do a cartwheel, which I am terrible at, it's so traumatic. And now, you know, I'm a mom, I am a professional, and I will have new people that I hire. Like when I'm interviewing them, they go, oh, well, I Googled you and I watched you on YouTube. And I'm like, how am I
That has
supposed
happened to me too.
when I'm like flailing around in a white leotard on television? I don't watch it, but you know, maybe with some group therapy, I can watch it again.
Watch with your kids. That's gonna be
Plus, it's
Yeah. You might find it more inspiring than you might think it is. I don't know. Like my season, the seasons that Amy and I were on, I was at the end of my PhD. And so I left school to do this and then came back and finished. And it actually motivated me to finish the ice cream research that I was doing. And so I actually use it as motivation. So I don't know, it'd be interesting if you watch it and see how you might think of it differently going back to it after it's been, you know, like 10 or so years.
I definitely used to watch the finale like towards the end of just frustrated with writing. I was like, at least I did one thing right. Let's watch the last couple of minutes of the finale.
You mentioned that people Google you as well. What do they say to you when they find out that you're an Amazing Race winner?
It's more just like when people recognize me at work. So I've had a lot of coworkers that have gone back and now watched our season. Enough time has passed that not everybody knows. So that's always funny. Or and I think this was brought up early, is Maya and I really have inspired people to get into STEM careers and into food science. So now I'll be like interviewing summer interns, for example, and one of them will like freak out when they see me on camera and all of a sudden recognize me. And the reason that they're even in food science to begin with is because of the Amazing Race.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Really cool to see.
It's amazing to be able to see young people say that they now want to be food scientists or be candy scientists or ice cream scientists, even know that food science is a thing because we were on the Amazing Race. And we didn't do anything related to, well, we actually did make butter in Morocco. So that is related to food science, but we didn't do food science related tasks necessarily. But it's just so interesting how just the mention of food science and the mention of ice cream scientists and candy scientists has literally transformed how people think of scientists and how people think of women scientists, and inspiring young people to go into the field. It's really, really, really cool. So thank you, Amazing Race, for the opportunity to transform lives.
Well, I think Michael, if you look at, you know, just everybody we have here today, and you look at the diversity and background and jobs and different professions and all of that, you know, we've really prided ourselves in trying to cast diversity and different voices to represent what America is made up of. And, you know, even going back to season 1 with the Guidos, you know, back then 20 something years ago, to have a gay couple showing affection for each other on national network television was a big deal. You know, people were gun shy about that. You know, like, how is middle America going to respond to the idea of Joe and Bill being affectionate towards each other? So we've tried not to shy away from any of those choices. And I'm very proud of everybody who's agreed to come on and share their story. Cause you know, we put you under a microscope for how many ever days. And we have some fantastic stories now. And hearing that story, Amy and Maya, like that you've inspired young people to think about that as that's so awesome. How cool is that?
Well, I gotta say, as a fan, you know, it's amazing to just live this race vicariously through all of you, and also to sort of explore the world through the Amazing Race. And that's been another great gift of this show, to share sort of the thrills of travel and to open up that world for folks who maybe, you know, hadn't thought about traveling or trying new things, even, you know, trying new food in their own city. is a way to travel internationally. So that spirit of The Amazing Race for 20 years continues. Phil, can't wait for you to get back on the road and finish that season. We need more race. So
listen, I'm chomping at the bit. I can't tell you. I mean, we got to get back out. We got to get this thing finished. And I think the first thing I'm going to say is, before I was so rudely interrupted, I think is what I'm going to say right out of the gate.
I think we should. But thank you so much, Robin, Brennan, Victor and Tammy, Leo and Jamal and Amy and Maya, and of course the one and only eliminator himself, Phil Koeghan. Thank you so much. Thank you, ATX TV Festival, and we'll see you again soon. I'm Michael Schneider. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Thanks, everybody.
You.
Thank you guys.
Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.